Welcome, everybody, to You Learn, You Turn on this beautiful Friday. I have a great guest today. His name is Christopher Burgess, but he goes by Chris. And he is a veteran navigation manager for the PTSD Foundation. And I'm going to read a little bit of his bio because I think he would probably be a little bit too humble to say all of this, but I was just so impressed. So Christopher is a United States Marine Corps combat veteran with service in Afghanistan. He joined the Marine Corps in 2011 and was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment, where he served as an infantry rifleman, SAW gunner, radio operator, and eventually as a scout radio operator with Scout Sniper Platoon. Deploying to Afghanistan in 2013, Chris participated in numerous raids and counter-narcotics trafficking operations as part of the 2/8 Aerial Raid Force, as well as supporting joint and training operations with the Afghan Commandos and Tiger teams. And after that, he discharged in 2015, and I'm going to let him talk about that and all about the PTSD Foundation and their Camp Hope that helps veterans get their lives back on track, helps with substance use disorder and PTSD, depression, all of that. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so you do great work. Tell us a little bit about why you do this work, because this is not easy and not everybody would choose to be in this field.
That's absolutely true. My why is easy. In my case, if it were not for the PTSD Foundation of America and our residential program here in Houston, Camp Hope, I wouldn't be here anymore. This organization, the program that we run, 100% saved my life. I burnt my life to the ground in 2018, had a total nervous breakdown, suicide attempt, was in and out of jail, in and out of the psych ward. Don't remember most of August to late November, early December 2018. One of the gentlemen from our Dallas chapter at the time came and found me in jail, and I'd been looking for help for a while. I knew things were messed up. I knew I needed help. I knew I was not doing okay, but was having a really hard time finding it. Had talked to a bunch of counselors and social workers, and they just didn't get it. Nothing against them. They were all great people, but they didn't get what I was trying to communicate was my issue.
Yeah.
And then here comes this guy on the other side of the glass, and he looks like me, talks like me. He's covered in tattoos. I cuss like a sailor. I'll try to keep that under wraps here. But, he, like I said, looked like me, talked like me. He was another guy. He was an Army vet, but he was a sniper in the Army. And, he got it. And immediately it was like, hold on, something's different here. And he told me a little bit about himself, told me a little bit about the organization. And, even at that point, not really knowing much about it, it's like, okay, well, this sounds like something that I want. I know I need help. Let's see what I can get here. So shortly after that, he took care of everything. Like I said, I was in jail at the time. He took care of everything, got me released, got me into the program at Camp Hope. And, the rest is history. Graduated the program about 7.5 months later, and started picking up some kind of odd jobs around the organization. And about a month after I graduated, a friend of mine that I had met after I graduated, who was working for the organization, just came and found me. He worked in the outreach department. He's like, hey man, my boss wants to interview you right now if you're available.
Wow.
And the first thing I thought of was, like I said, the gentleman that had come and found me. I was like, wait, you mean like come interview me to do the job of this guy that completely changed my life? Sold. Wow. Sign me up. Like, done. and obviously I'm a manager now. I don't do that as much anymore, but that was my main role for the first couple of years I was with the organization. I was constantly on the phone with probation officers, lawyers, judges, district attorneys, um, everybody under the sun, working to get guys approved or allowed to attend treatment when they found themselves between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
So that's my why. It's not easy, you know, especially in my role or in my team's role. There's not a lot of wins. We work in not just in outreach, but in kind of a unique spot in outreach because we don't have a geographic area, where we're based. That's our responsibility. We have a chapter in Houston that runs Houston.
Okay.
We are located in Houston, but my team's responsibility is everywhere that we don't have a chapter. So we don't get to visit guys in person. We don't really work with guys long term and kind of see the wins. Our goal or our mission is people reach out to us in crisis. We work to connect them to whatever resources are the best fit for them. We don't just bring guys into Camp Hope. We'll get guys into other facilities. We'll work with people that don't qualify for our program. We'll work with people that, have needs other than to get into a residential program. Sometimes they need help with finances. They need anything under the sun. We work to provide that, get them out of crisis, and once they're kind of out of crisis or once they're into a program, they fall off our caseload and we pick up the next guy who's in crisis.
Right.
So it definitely can be tough at times because unlike, for example, the guys that work in our program where from time to time you get to see these huge leaps and bounds when a guy's in a 6 to 9 month program. Like you get to see the light bulb come on.
Right.
We kind of just move from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. So it definitely can start to be a burden. And I mean, there's times where we work with guys and they go back out,
Yeah.
or they commit suicide or they get locked up again, and sometimes we can't get them permission to attend treatment. Sometimes they burn their last bridge,
Right.
and that's tough. That's tough when, you just got to kind of walk with a guy through. There's not really anywhere. There's not anything that we can do at this point.
Right.
We've asked the judge or the DA if they'll let you attend treatment, and they have said, no, we've tried that in the past. And,
Yeah.
this
That
was his
is
last chance.
that is a hard position for you to be in, especially since you struggle with a suicide attempt as well as depression. I'm sure that a lot of you feels like you're kind of trying to help yourself, but you got to know that on the back end, a lot of them are going to make it through, even though you don't get to see, that aspect of it anymore. But tell us a little bit about the PTSD Foundation of America. What does it do, and how did it come about, and how did it kind of Camp Hope was sort of a spinoff of that. How did that all come to be?
So I haven't been here since the beginning, but I'll do my very best to give a quick history lesson. The organization started in about 2011. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary of Camp Hope, the facility, last year.
Congrats.
And it really just started as a grassroots effort in the Houston area to assist homeless veterans and make an impact in ending veteran suicide.
Mhm.
It started real small. We were just kind of doing some outreach activities, trying to get in touch with homeless veterans, trying to get them some help, trying to do some support groups. And then eventually we got a 5-acre plot of land here in Northwest Houston where we're located. And bit by bit, when we got it, it was just trees and dirt. And bit by bit, we cleared it out, started putting some buildings down, started hosting some groups at, a physical location. And that turned into the precursor to a program, kind of a sober living. We have a couple groups. If you need a safe place to stay, we have 6 bedrooms, and we can hold 8 or 10 guys. And gradually over time, we just kept building more buildings, clearing out a little bit more of the lot, build some more buildings, build some more facilities, uh, build out the program itself to where it's less, hey, you live here and we go to the Y a couple times a week and we run some groups, and if you need help with stuff, let us know and we'll try to help. And over time it grew into what it is now, where we have one main housing building. It's a quadplex that houses about 60 veterans, and then a handful of more smaller buildings that house 10, 12. So our total capacity on camp is right around 120, 125, which
Wow.
is where we're sitting now. And we have classroom building, we have a gym on site. Uh, we have some really nice outdoor areas, just kind of rec areas for family days or visitation, or just for the guys to take advantage of when they're not in class. We have a big multi-purpose building where we do church on Sundays. It's where we host all of our AA, NA, and warrior groups. It's where meals go. We do communal meals. Uh, and it's just grown and grown and grown. Just in the last year, we brought our professional counseling services in-house. We used to contract with a counseling center, but as our census kept rising and we went from having 40, 50, 60 guys up to 80, 90, 100, 120, busing guys became a problem because we don't have
True.
3 buses.
Yeah.
So we rearranged our front office building and built some counseling offices in, brought all our professional counseling services in-house. And at this point, we have a, fully formed 6 to 9 month program with an optional sober living phase after graduation, on-site clinical counseling. Just brought on a nurse practitioner to start rounding out our medical team. And we're just continuing to build out. We just got CARF accredited here recently. So basically, without that cert, we are unable to bill the VA for the services that we provide.
Gotcha.
Because previously we've been 100% donor funded. Houston has been insanely generous to us. This city loves veterans like nowhere else I've ever been in my life. They have been incredibly generous. Um, Everything that I've talked about is 100% free to the veteran. There's no cost whatsoever for a 6 to 9 month program.
That's
You
amazing.
literally be homeless with a shirt on your back. We'll bring you in, bring you to supply, get you socks, underwear, shorts, t-shirts, shoes, backpack, notebooks, pens, pencils, anything that you need, soap, shampoo, towels, pillows, blankets, everything. Um, and we'll feed you 3 meals a day all the way through the program for 9 months. If you still need help after that, like I said, you just go into the optional green phase, which is sober living post graduation. And you got a minimum of another 90 days that will house you, feed you, clothe you while you figure out what your next steps are. Um, so it's a really cool organization, uh, and it's different from just about every other place out there because it grew up grassroots. It wasn't started by a team of psychologists and doctors and people that have run treatment facilities in the past. It was started by a pastor and a bunch of folks that love vets and wanted to do whatever we could to help. So over time, we've, learned by trial and error. Our program wasn't 6 to 9 months originally,
Yeah.
but the long-term success rates weren't what we wanted them to be. So we kept building out the program and adding classes and adding material, because since we are donor funded, We don't have to ask the VA or ask the insurance companies to cover more treatment. It's 100% up to us. If we determine that 30 days or 60 days or 90 days is not a long enough program, we just make our program longer. And we can do that. We don't have to ask anybody for permission. Like, please, will you continue paying for this guy to be in treatment? Because the insurance company is going to say no. The VA is going to say no. Their average programs are 30, 45, 60 days. Maybe if you get incredibly lucky, you can find a 90-day program somewhere.
Yeah.
But those are exceedingly rare. And the success rates in those 30-day programs are, for the most part, not great. They're not something that we would be happy with. So we built out a program that we believe is the best that can be done, without having to worry about, well, will the VA pay for it, or will the insurance company pay for guys to go here? We just, because we grew up grassroots and we grew up getting help from our donors, who love the mission and our kind of singular focus on what do the vets need versus what will the VA pay for, or what will insurance companies pay for. We had a really interesting kind of path to where we're at, and we've been able to do what nobody else can do.
Yeah. It sounds like, treatment centers usually build the building, build the beds, and find the people. What you've done is you've built beds according to the number of people you have, not the other way around. So you really have built it kind of like we've done U-Turn Health. We've built it out to meet the clients that we have. We didn't build this huge company and then go out and try to find clients. We've grown according to how many clients we have and the need for it. And a couple of questions came to mind while you were talking, and please forgive me if you did answer these, but you have to be a vet to go through your program, but do you have to have a like substance use disorder, or can you just have mental health challenges?
So for our program, the only qualification to go through our program, our residential program here, the only qualifications are to be a male combat veteran, and that's nothing against female veterans. We just don't
Yeah.
have the
No.
housing. You know, please don't crucify me. We still work with female veterans. We just don't have the ability to house them in our program. We
Now,
tried it in the
you have
past.
to be in Texas?
No. So
Okay.
all you need to do is be a male combat veteran, and
Wow.
we will take care of you. I've flown guys into our program from Brazil, from the UK, from the Philippines. It does not matter where you are. We will get you into the program here if you are a male combat veteran.
You better
Um,
be careful. You're going to have people knocking down your door.
we're,
120 beds. Wow. You better
yeah, we're
build.
on a wait list right now. We haven't been on one since kind of the thick of it, with COVID in 2020, maybe 2020, 2021. We were on a wait list for a little while, and we just went back on one in the last 6 weeks or so. Um, so yeah, we're moving. The biggest thing we need now is more beds, and
Can you tell me? Go
that
ahead.
doesn't. Unfortunately, you can't build beds as quickly as you can fill them.
No,
So
that's
that's where we're kind of stuck at right now. Is expansion plans, because we're about maxing out our 5 acres. So now the question is, do we try to build more housing on our 5 acres, or do we start looking at another property, or do we start offloading some of our services to another location? Maybe do we put our sober living guys somewhere else and use that space for guys in the program? So one thing that's really, really cool about our program, or I should say another thing that I think is really, really cool about our program, is uh, Camp Hope is a peer-to-peer program. So a
oh,
hundred
okay.
percent, 100% of our mentors on Camp Hope are combat veterans who've been through the program, which means at some point they burnt their life down due to mental health and substance abuse. And they are now in recovery for mental health issues and or substance abuse. And to answer your earlier question, you do not have to have a substance abuse issue to come to Camp Hope. We're not a dual diagnosis facility. That's one of those things I could go off for a long time. The vast majority of the guys we work with do have substance abuse issues, but there's also a lot that don't. I didn't have a substance abuse issue. I burnt my life absolutely to the ground without substances. I don't say I don't say I didn't have that to brag, because the fact of the matter is I ended up in exactly the same place as anybody else. I just ended up there without substances. So
Right.
take that, however, I mean, you don't need a substance abuse problem to burn your life to the ground.
No, certainly not.
And a lot of facilities are or can only work with, a lot of times it's through the VA, they can only bill the VA for dual diagnosis.
Right.
So if you don't have a substance abuse problem, or if you are currently sober and really struggling with your mental health, your PTSD, they can't help you because you have to check both boxes.
Jeez.
So you're kind of stuck in this position of either you don't qualify for help, or are you saying that I should go relapse and then I'll qualify for your program, which is not something that you would ever want to recommend to somebody.
No.
But that's a huge percentage of facilities, can only admit dual diagnosis. So if you're sober, you can find yourself in a little bit of a pickle if you have severe mental health issues going on. You really need to be inpatient or residential somewhere.
What do you think the biggest issue is facing veterans today? Why the suicides are higher than ever? Why homelessness is higher than ever?
I think so. You could answer that question in a whole bunch of ways. You could say, well, for a lot of guys, PTSD is a delayed onset issue. Most guys don't get help within 5 years of ending their active service. It is not uncommon for guys to not seek help until 10, 15, 18, 20 years after service.
Okay.
So I'm sure that could play a role, and we're still seeing guys kind of white knuckling it. They're just angry, or they're just depressed, or they put a mask on and nobody really knows that they're struggling with the things they're struggling with. Same as kind of like in the law enforcement community. There's a lot of guys that have issues, but in some of these communities, like, yeah, we're all angry. We all drink too much. Like, we all get in fights off the clock. Like, it's not until something really bad happens and you're facing time or you're facing some massive repercussions that guys will start to take a kind of a quiet moment with themselves and say, like, okay, maybe I do want to get some help, because it's get help or go to the penitentiary. Okay, or until they get a DUI, like, until something bad happens, we're really good at rubbing some dirt in it and driving on and pretending it's not there.
Yeah.
But also, I think, honestly, really still a big issue is people don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I say everybody. A lot of people know what PTSD is. A lot of people want to support the vets. A lot of people think, look on social media. I mean, how many 22 a day challenges have there been? Like, it's in the awareness. The problem is not that people are not aware of PTSD. The problem is that there's not a lot of solutions. It's still difficult to talk about it. And part of the reason I say that is, like, I grew up in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has a terrible, terrible, terrible opiate problem.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the problem is nobody talks about it. When you have an overdose and somebody passes away, it's never mentioned. It's never talked about. the obituary just says that they passed away, or maybe that it was an untimely death. So nobody talks about, no, this is a substance abuse problem. Like, we're losing people to this. And when it's not talked about, it doesn't connect with people. So people don't think, oh man, my neighbors lost their son to drugs or to substance abuse. They just know that they lost their son.
Yeah.
And it's the same with kind of PTSD. Like, it doesn't get talked about enough. And part of that is on us. That's why I don't mind. That's why everyone that we work with, we do events all the time, speaking engagements, telling our story,
Yeah.
because that's a huge piece of getting other people to open up, is showing them that they're not the only one. Because I'll tell you a real quick story, from my story, is when I got to Camp Hope, day one, I showed up on Thursday. Thursday's a warrior group day. I'd never been in a warrior group before. I'd never been in an AA or NA group before. Warrior groups are basically AA or NA groups, but centered around trauma. They're combat veteran groups. They're all closed groups.
Mm-hmm.
So for combat veterans, by combat veterans, about those issues. And it happened to be a warrior group day. And like I said, I showed up to Camp Hope. And at that point, I had, like I said, burned my life to the ground. I felt like I was the single biggest piece of human garbage walking the face of the planet.
Mm.
And I just didn't have any spare F's to give at that point. And my thought process was, well, it's my first day. Let me just let everybody know so I don't start to develop friendships. And then these people learn who I am and, they all shun me.
Yeah.
And so I just said, what the hell, I'll speak. And I told my story and, finished my story and was ready for everybody to kind of be like, ugh, like, what a just garbage human. And this room full of guys just goes, yeah, I did that. I did that. I did that. I did that too. Like, glad you're here, dude. Like, you're in the right place. And I was flabbergasted,
Mm-hmm.
because I did feel like I was the biggest turd on planet Earth, because I didn't know anybody else that was going through what I was going through. And day one, I sit down in a group, I lay out all my dirt, and every one of these 10 or 12 guys in the room is like, yep, same story or worse. Glad you're here. Like,
Yeah. By talking about it, you're breaking the stigma. I often think, and I know that we're all trying to do this with like first responders and veterans, education to start right as you come on the job. So the military providing aid, education, and support while you're going through these, traumatic events that do cause PTSD. I mean, I think, starting on the front end would be almost a better way than just trying to pick everybody up off the street. Both are valuable, both are needed. But I do hope the awareness starts to come through for first responders. And because I think the military, first responders, you guys are all expected, construction workers, to just, keep on going. It doesn't matter what you've seen or what you've done.
well, and that's a huge piece of the problem too, is, some of that, it's not great, but some of that does exist in service. The problem is, and it's the same first responders or military, we all know what's going to happen if we, you know, check the boxes for mental health. Like, you're going to come
What will
off
happen?
duty. You're going to come off duty. You're going to get taken
Yeah.
off of deployable status. You're going to get plunked behind a desk. So
Okay.
every single one of us is like, nope, fine, no nightmares, sleep great, feel great, no depression, no anxiety. I'm wonderful. Thanks for the survey. I'm going back to do my job. And I'm not saying taking somebody off duty is not the right decision. It probably is, but we know that. So we are going to minimize and even outright lie in those scenarios. And that's where organizations like us are so valuable because we're not connected to your job at all.
That's right.
You can come tell us anything you want to tell us.
Yeah.
Just like AA or NA, there is no, like, we don't report to anybody. You can
Right.
come to us and say, you know, every day when I get off work, like, I sit and I drink until I pass out because I cannot make the voices in my head go away. If you told your captain that, or if you told your platoon commander that, they might send you somewhere. They might take you off the job. With
Yeah.
us, we can go, I get it, because we did the same things. You know, if your story is not exactly mine, I can guarantee you I know somebody that has the exact same experiences, and that's what we leverage. But we are an outlet for guys like that. You know, we have no connection to your job, to your
Right.
service. You can get help from us and it will never come back in any way, shape, or form because we don't know your bosses. We don't talk to your bosses. We're also all confidentiality guys, not only because not even because of some type of clinical licensure issue. Like,
Right.
we're just that way. Like, we hold our groups sacred, just like anyone who is a serious sponsor in A or NA. They're not gonna share your business
Right.
because that is right up there with their religion. Like, no, have you lost your mind? Confidentiality is sacred to me, and I'm not
Right.
going to share what you tell me with anybody because that's how this program works. Is you have to be able to be totally honest with me in order for us to succeed. So that's what's really incredible about us, and that's one thing that our chapters do is they run those groups, and we have active first responders. In some cases, we will have active duty military in those groups, and they love that fact that we are not connected in any way, shape, or form, so they can get help without worrying about, am I going to lose my security clearance?
Right.
Are they going to take my gun? Are they going to put me behind a desk? Are they going to stick me, in some admin duty somewhere that I don't want? Because that, for a lot of us, is, we'd rather die.
It's your
That
identity,
was one of
right?
my big issues when I got out. I got out of the Marine Corps because I started sleepwalking after my deployment, and that's a disqualifying factor. And
Wow.
all of a sudden, reenlistment and everything else was off the table. Um, and I didn't know what to do with that because that was all I ever wanted to do. There is no civilian version of Marine Corps infantry. There is nowhere to go to do the same job. It's not like you were an accountant in the military and now you go be an accountant, or a truck driver and a truck driver. Um, and that was one of those things that I had talked to social workers and counselors about, and they're like, "Oh, well, you could be a cop or you could do this." Like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like, this is not the same. Like, this is
Right.
all I've ever wanted to do, and now I can't ever do it again, and I
Uh,
don't know how to handle that.
yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of issues like that just don't come in anywhere else.
Yeah.
There's stuff that you see in a movie sometimes, where they're trying to portray PTSD, and it's like, oh, like, is that really? That doesn't really
Mhm.
happen. But there's untold number of guys who have been in scenarios where it's like, yeah, I had to shoot a kid, or I had to run over a kid. Like, and you can't have those conversations easily, you know.
No.
Um, and I've worked with guys that have tried to have conversations like that with counselors or whoever, and it shocks them. And they were already so uncomfortable to have this conversation that even just that,
Yeah.
glimmer of, it's like, okay, well, I'm done talking to this person. Like,
Yeah.
I saw what they just thought of me,
Yeah.
and I'm not going any further down this path. But with us, you know, we all get it because we've all either been there or one of our best friends has been there.
Yeah.
So we get it, and we've heard all the stories. There's very, very little, if anything, that anybody could tell any one of us that's been with the organization for a while that's going to shock us, because we live in it. Like, we're familiar with it. We've all lived it,
I
and
had
we
a
all know each other's stories.
I had a first responder come on, and he said that he went to a therapist and told her everything that had been going on and what he had seen. And he ended up having to console her because she was crying so hard at what he was telling her. So, well, this has been so enlightening. Had no idea that Camp Hope even existed, and a place that's free for veterans to go and get their life back on track for 6 to 9 months. It's almost like a miracle that y'all exist. I
Oh,
really
absolutely.
I want to get your information. I will link all the links to Camp Hope and all of that, and put your bio. Is there anything that you could say? I love to end with like a moment of hope to a veteran who might watch this on YouTube and is saying, that might work for them, but not for me. My life is over. Um, is there a way that they could just call, or what would you say to that person to get them to call in and maybe get some help?
So what I would say to that, and there's a million examples I could use. I'll just use my own personal example. I'll speak from my own perspective. When I graduated Camp Hope, when I finished the program and had gotten my head and my heart in order, which was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Uh, but when I was no longer suicidal, so the biggest thing was off the list, I still was in debt up to my eyeballs. I was pending a felony charge. I had no job. I had no place to live. If I hadn't been at Camp Hope, I would have been under a bridge. Uh, I had no friends because I had burned every relationship that I had by being insane for 3 or 4 months before I got into Camp Hope. I had nothing and no prospects of anything. Um, at that point, you know, I didn't think, like, I wasn't suicidal anymore, but my real nuts and bolts life was like, this is a mess and it's probably going to be a mess forever. Like, I don't see a way out of this. And that's, like I said, 7 months into recovery, having graduated the program. 2 years after that, I had held a job for 2 years, gotten promoted a couple of times, gotten married. I bought my first house that I've ever owned in my life. I made more progress in those 2 years after graduation by quite simply doing the next right thing um, consistently than I thought I would have been able to make in 10 years. Giving your higher power, for me, it's God, doesn't have to be, but giving your higher power the opportunity to make changes in your life and focusing all of your energies on just doing the next right thing and not trying to plan a year, 5 year, 10 years ahead will have the biggest impact on your life. Like, you won't be able to believe it. Like I said, I thought my life was over even after I graduated the program. In 2 years, I'd done more than I could have imagined doing in 10. And it still blows my mind. I still, on my anniversaries of getting to the program and graduating the program, I still stop and think about it every single year and go, man, I cannot freaking believe what my life looks like. I never thought I would be where I am now. Not in a million years. So, I mean, it's there. It doesn't matter how dark things are right now, they can always get better. You can turn it around, and we are happy to help you. We've all been there. There's not a single person that you're going to talk to if you pick up the phone and call us that doesn't get it. You know, so just reach out. You got absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Wow. Well, I hope there's someone listening that will pick up that phone and call and hear your story. And be encouraged by it. And I just appreciate, Chris, your openness and willingness to share your story. And not only that, but to take your experience and give back. That is what we need more of. And I love the fact that you use peer-to-peer help. I really believe in that. And just thank you for everything you're doing for veterans. And I hope to hear more about Camp Hope and how you've grown. And I hope you get more funding. So with that, I'll say goodbye to our listeners. Thank you for joining You Learn, You Turn, and we'll see you next time.